Well, welcome everyone. Today is Tuesday, May 19th, 2020. I'm Troy Hicks, Director of the Chippewa River Writing Project, and we are so glad that you're here. We are now going over the hump. We are in the second half of our webinar series. This is session 5, PBL at Home, Designing Meaningful Research Projects. We have, again, my friend and colleague Jeremy Heiler and Dr. Sharon Murchie, both of whom have experience as teachers as well as authors and doing lots of online work with their students. And so we're very much looking forward to their session today. And I'm going to try to be as fast as possible whipping through these first few slides, but I do have some kind of perfunctory information and tidbits as we get going. So one thing I noticed as I was updating everything and looking at the calendar, June 8th is not a Tuesday, it's June 9th is our last Tuesday. So I put that nice little blocky, chunky number 9 right over top of there. We do have today and then 3 additional webinars, the last of which will be on June 9th. I did not want to change every single thing I had done on social media, but I'll put that on that slide right there. And as mentioned just a moment ago, we are currently in session 5, and we have had some really enjoyable, thoughtful, just wonderful conversations so far. I know today will be much the same. And you can kind of get a sense of what we've seen. If you haven't been here before, those archives are available on our website under that continuity of learning. If you have been here before, welcome back. We really appreciate you. And we have dates, June 15th to June 26th. We are offering our remote literacy learning online summer institute, and we'll share a little bit more about that at the end. With the next slide, just as a reminder, we've been in this remote learning mode for a few weeks now, and it's kind of interesting to see where we started and where we're at and all the things we still have to learn. I think it's worthwhile to just take a moment to bring these questions and concerns back to light at the beginning of each session, because they're timely and topical. And even though we might tweak and change the questions just a little bit from session to session, that we're still wrestling with all these things, trying to figure out how to ask smart questions about the best ways that we can connect with our students. So it's always worth having those here just as a reminder of what we're thinking about. A few other things. Zoom, of course, keeps updating. I think now if you're on one of the last 2 or 3 versions of Zoom that have been released in the last 2 or 3 weeks, hyperlinks should work again, but you can always do a right click and open them up in another browser window if you need to. We kindly ask that you mute your mic when you're not talking. And there will be opportunities to talk, I'm sure, throughout our session today. And if you want to save the chat at the end, you click on those little ellipses at the bottom and you can save the chat. If you just want the links, I do try to take out all the links and put them in the archive with the show notes. So those are available to you as well. And last but not least, before I turn it over to Jeremy and Sharon, we are a site of the National Writing Project at Central Michigan University. And as such, we do get some support from the university, but mostly our work is done through grants and contracted professional development. So if you've enjoyed the series and you'd like to continue to support the work of the Writing Project, you can, of course, make a donation. We would be more than happy to have that and much appreciate it. Or if you're interested in ways to bring professional development to your district or ISD or region, please let me know. There's my email address right there on the slide. And of course, we'll talk about our Remote Literacy Learning Institute by the end of the time today. Whew, I'm getting faster each week. I think it's time to turn it over to Jeremy and Sharon. Anything I forgot, I'll try to pick it up at the end. So, all right, I'll turn it over to the 2 of you. Thanks.
I'm going to allow Sharon to go first because I have chivalry, and I'll allow ladies to go first.
Oh, right. But alphabetically, you're supposed to go first, Jeremy.
Oh, dang it.
But that's fine. I'll go first. My name's Sharon Murchie. I teach high school ELA in Bath, Michigan, primarily all the junior English, AP Lit, and then a number of electives. Yes, we are fighting bees or angry bees. I'm not sure what that, yeah. Anyway, and I'm on Twitter sometimes at Smirchies, but that's me.
So my name is Jeremy Heiler, and I am a middle school ELA science teacher at Fulton Schools, which is literally out in the middle of a cornfield and in Middleton, Michigan. And I currently am teaching 6th grade English and 7th grade science. And I also teach a creative writing class that rotates between 7th and 8th grade. And who knows what next year will bring. I may wind up teaching something different. And you can also find me on Twitter at Jeremy B. Baller. As we have addressed in the last couple of weeks, some shameless plugs for our books with Dr. Murchie's teaching the research paper they want to write. I believe she's going to be highlighting a lot of stuff out of her book today with this, so it'll be awesome to hear what she has to say, and very pleased to be able to present with her again. And then there's some other books dealing kind of with what we've been dealing with remote learning with Create, Compose, Connect, and some of the other grammar components that go with English class. And then our newest one that Troy and I wrote with Dr. William Pangle, out of Central Michigan University is Ask, Explore, Write, which is dealing with science and literacy and learning. And it comes a lot with our Beaver Island Institute, which unfortunately is not happening this year just because of everything going on. So before I get into what I am going to start off with today, how we set it up is I'm going to talk to you about some tools that you can use to help your students with the research, starting the research process, and also a small research project that I do with my middle school students, and it seems to be effective. But I want to apologize that you have to put up with my ugly mug for the 3rd week in a row. I promise you that after this week, I'll be taking a hiatus for a little bit while, and some other people will be jumping in here that are definitely worthy of listening to. So what I'd like you to do today is I would like you to go to this site. It's actually called Mentimeter, but it's menti.com is what you're going to go to, and then you're going to type in this code that's right here at the top. And it's 726618. And what I'm asking you to do is I'm asking you to do a scale, and I'll show you that scale in real time here in just a moment. But I'm asking you 3 questions. It's students struggle with organization, with research, strongly disagree, or strongly agree. Giving student feedback on writing can take a plethora of time. Strongly disagree, or you strongly agree. And then engaging students with research is a challenge just in general. Strongly disagree or agree. And so I'm going to exit out here for just a moment. So hopefully you got that code. It is, again, it's menti.com, and it's 726618. I'm actually going to go to my real time. What you guys will see is you will see this. If you look at my screen, and don't forget to smash that submit button as well, so we can see your results. But I'm going to actually present this, and so you can see we can see what our results actually look like. So we're getting some, and it should change as people are adding to it. This is just another way to help get some engagement at the beginning of your lessons. This might be something you can use with your classroom. It's titled mentimeter.com. It is a freemium. They do give you some free stuff, and then they entice you with some other offers as well. So kind of in the middle with engaging students with research. Probably depends on the topic. If you're giving students the choice in their topic, it's probably a little bit easier for them for you to have engagement with your students, for sure. The organization always seems to be an issue. So maybe these are more of a trick question that I had for you. But you can see that there are some issues that students, and we all agree that there are some issues with taking time to give quality feedback, and there's also a little bit of issues with organization. And with remote learning, it's probably even more difficult to do some of these things. So, all right, what I'm going to do is, hopefully you've seen my screen, you can see that. I'm going to go back to our session, and I want to thank you for participating in that. And I'm going to go back to my presentation here. Oops. And go forward and kind of talk to you a little bit and address some of the questions. the first thing that I wanted to address with you is just kind of talking to you about some strategies that I use in my classroom that can be very helpful to you. And I wanted to look at it from the student side and also look at it from the teacher side as well. So some things to kind of keep in mind are Google Keep that we're going to be looking at. So just by a show of hands, if you can kind of put your hand up, use that little hand symbol in the chat room. How many of you use Google Keep as a professional, or maybe even as in your own personal use? How many of you can show some hands? You can put your hand, you can, there you go. I see some thumbs up going up there. I see some, and Dr. Murchie's like, yeah, kind of. Seeing some other ones go up. Google Keep can be used, I feel, by the students and by teachers as well. And I also am going to talk to you a little bit about a couple of kind of private, more private websites that don't use logarithms and filter bubbles. And this was something that was introduced to me actually by Dr. Hicks, which is Dogpile and DuckDuckGo. And then a way to kind of help your students understand this is addressing things with TED Talks. And I know that Dr. Murchie is going to talk to you about some TED Talks, and actually I think she has one to show you today with things. One of the things that I always preface to my students when I start off research with them is I always tell them that research equals reading. They're going to have to read. I don't know how many times that I have students that actually will just do like look at the first choice that that pops up on Google, or the first choice that they look at on Yahoo, or whatever the case may be, or they see something on Wikipedia, which is not a bad site to look at things, but it's not the only one that's out there. But they're always like, well, I didn't find anything on my topic. And we always have to have the conversation about, well, how much reading did you really do? So these are some of the issues that I'm going to talk to you about today, and I'm going to try not to bore you too much. So with Google Keep for students, what I use with my students is I have them use it to organize their sources. And Google Keep is really nice because you can create these sticky notes, and you can preface the sticky notes by labeling them and also putting specific labels in terms of categories. They're called labels, but they're categories that you have on the left-hand side of your screen with Google Keep. And I'll go over to Google Keep here in just a moment. But in kind of remembrance of yesterday, those of you that don't know much about Michigan history, yesterday was the anniversary of the Bath Massacre that took place in the 1800s, and where there was a disgruntled board member and community member that actually bombed the school, the community school in that district, and where 38 children and 6 adults were killed. So I used that as an example of a source that I could pull out. And yes, I purposely used Wikipedia to show you that Wikipedia is not always bad, as long as we are checking sources. But how I have my students set it up is I have them break it into the different sources. I have them write down in the link, and you can see in the slide that it'll actually give you a little bit of a snippet of what the link looks like. And then I actually have my 6th graders write down 3 pieces of information that they found useful in that source. And so they're keeping track of their sources as they go along. And for 6th grade, I tell them that they have to have at least 3 sources when we do a mini research project. I like using Google Keep because students won't lose note cards. I know traditionally it's usually the case people use note cards, and I know that there's some other tools that are out there as well. This is really simple for my students because I like the fact that they can carry over their notes into a Google document, and I'll show you that in just a moment. I also like the fact that it can teach them organization. Through this remote learning, one of the things that was expressed through surveys with my students was they were having trouble organizing all of the information from all their classes because they're just getting bombarded day after day with lessons and units and different activities that they were supposed to do. So I actually did a video through Screencast-O-Matic on how to use Google Keep so my students could keep that in line as well in terms of kind of making checklists. And plus, Google Keep is just like anything else that is Google, and that you can be collaborative. And you can have students do some collaborative research project as well. And also, instead of you fumbling around with note cards in your briefcase or your bag that you bring back and forth from home to grade papers, it can be shared with you, and you can just take a look at student notes. So I'm just going to exit out for just a minute. And what I wanted to do is just show you real quick in terms of looking at Google Keep. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you Google Keep in terms of what it looks like, might look like from a student perspective on a Google Doc. You can see over here it says Google Keep, or there's a symbol for Google Keep. It's a little light bulb. And then you can see all of the different things that students have in terms of their notes. And so here is source number 1. Now, you can actually add this note. I can bring it over here and I can drop it in there, and it'll drop everything in there for me. I already had it dropped in there. Or I can actually click on the specific note and I can highlight, and then I can just copy what I want over there. What I talk to my students about is actually taking these little bullet points that they have and turning those into sentences. And we talk about what kinds of sentences could we turn those into. So it can also turn into a mini sentence structure lesson for them as well. So Google Keep, like I said, can be used in a number of different ways, and how that works best for your particular class and how you would use it for remote learning is completely up to you. But just real quick to show you, these are the labels. So I have different labels for like Beaver Island, English class, Google English class, Google Science, literary devices. There's lots of different ways that you can label these notes. You can color code the notes. Students like the color code, so you can do lots of different things. I always give my students time to play around with Google Keep at the beginning of the year. And then you can also add pictures to Google Keep as well. So lots of different possibilities with Google Keep for students. And so that's the student side of things. And then I want to show you the teacher side of things. This is what I find really cool. Those of you that are using Google Classroom, you know that you can actually have a comment bank in Google Classroom where you can just start typing and then you can choose the comment. If you create a comment bank, well, that they don't have that for like the Google document. That's one thing I wish they would have for Google Documents. So what I do is I use Google Keep to help with my teacher feedback if I just have students submit a Google document, and then I can access it just like I showed you on that Google document. Here's just one example of a note that I have where I can just copy and paste that note over into the comment section of Google Documents so that I can give quick feedback to my students. And so there's lots of different ways that you could do that with Google Keep, and you can also do individual notes where maybe each comment is just a note and you can drag it over there, and it might be simpler to do it that way too. So like I said, teachers don't have piles of note cards. It's easier to move students forward in the writing process. What I mean by that is you can create checklists. And so if I want to create a class list in Google Keep, and I'm going through the writing process with my students, and so the first step is gathering their sources, and so I can check off these students, and as I check them off, it'll put them at the bottom and show me who has them completed, and these are the students that I still have to complete that process. And no, these are not real names of my students. These are just made up names. I'll give you an example, but I could also do that with my organization, so I know who is done, who's not done. And you might be asking yourself, well, I could do that in a grade book. Well, maybe you're not doing any grades in terms of that next step. So in the grade book, so this might be a way to help you stay organized. And then this can be collaborative as well. In terms of if you're doing some kind of a research project with a science teacher, a social studies teacher, or any other teachers in your building. And this can be a way for you to both keep track of things and how they're going. So any questions before I get into filter bubbles at all? Troy, do you see any questions in the chat at all?
Do not see any in the chat, and I know you're going to be talking about DuckDuckGo, so I'll drop that link in for people here in just a moment when you're ready to talk about it.
Okay. Whoops, not quite yet though. So one of the things that I address with my students as we move forward here is filter bubbles, and this is something that came to me by Dr. Hicks. I can't take credit for this, but there is a TED Talk, and Troy's going to drop that link in there for the TED Talk, and it's Troy, help me with his last name. It's Eli. How do you pronounce his last name?
I've heard it pronounced Pariser, so
Okay.
Eli Pariser,
Okay.
and the TED Talk it's called Beware of Online Filter Bubbles. And we'll drop that in the chat right now.
Thank you. And so what Eli talks about is the idea that there is no normal Google anymore. Everything is a logarithms based on your search history, based on your profile. If you log into Google with your profile and you're looking at things as you're signed into your account. And so it kind of keeps track of those things. And really, that's kind of the world we're living in. What you shop on Amazon, what you buy on Netflix, or I'm sorry, what you shop for on Amazon, what you watch on Netflix, those different types of things, different news sources that you look at. And so it's really hard to get this kind of unbiased look at things by just simply using Google. And so a couple of the sources that Troy has given me and I use in my class for my students is a site called DuckDuckGo and Dogpile. And both of those do not use the filter bubbles. They're very private. And I put screenshots of, if I search the Bath school disaster, and I put the pictures, the screenshots of both those up there so you can see that with DuckDuckGo and Dogpile, I got the exact same things because there's no filter bubbles on there. So first search in each one was Wikipedia, then the Smithsonian, and then it was through the University of Michigan as well. Now, if I did that with Google and I didn't put a slide in here for Google, my search is going to be a little bit mixed based on the searches that I've done. I might find something, I might get an advertisement from Amazon to purchase a book, because there is a book by a Michigan author that's really fantastic. And I might get some other ads that come up, or I might get some other search feature, some other searches that I can go to, or other sites that I can go to. So with these two, you're going to get the exact same thing, and you're not going to get that filter bubble. So one of the other things, I'm going to go back here before I get into this. One of the other things that I wanted to mention too, with talking about students with filter bubbles, is that you can show the video. There is that TED Talk that Troy was talking about. And then one of the other things you can do too is you can talk about logarithms with your students. And KQED has a YouTube series called Above the Noise, and they address some really awesome topics that are out there. And they do talk about going down the rabbit hole specifically with YouTube, but they address that idea of logarithms and why logarithms are used to help YouTube or to help different sites. So that might help give your students an inside edge on terms of them understanding how logarithms work. So taking all this, what is something that I can do with my students that is simple? If you've never heard of Barry Lane or his book called Wacky Research Reports, it is awesome. They have very small, engaging projects. I feel like they are super easy to grade. There is a website here. The website is not up to date, I don't believe, from the last time I looked through it, and even looking at it the last couple of days, but there are some things on there that are pretty cool that you can take a look at. And then this is also one of those things where it's really possible for students to collaborate for you as a teacher, and for them as students, that might be a little bit easier for them to do as a research project. This is a project that I did with my students, and it's called the Wacky Tabloids, or Wacky Headlines. And so this is one of my student examples. And this individual did something on butterflies. And what I did is I gave them a template to follow, where they had to come up with the title of their tabloid, and they had to come up with the title of the headline, and they had to provide a picture along with giving some information on the left-hand side. And I believe the link to the template was down in the notes. I think Troy probably shared that out with you. But you can see that this individual's headline was "Butterflies Butter Their Flies." So just something goofy for them. They were engaged. They got to choose their own topic. They just had some parameters to follow. And this comes right out of the Wacky Research book by Barry Lane. So something very simple to follow. So just kind of some things to think about before I hand it over to Sharon. Trying not to go too fast here, but I also want to be respectful of the fact that Sharon's got some things to present as well. Teach students that research does equal reading, and in the end, we hope that it does equal a better end product. We spend quite a few weeks in class, and it takes even longer outside of class for them to create a product. They're already online, so let's get them to look at some resources that are out there, and let's get them to use things like DuckDuckGo and Dogpile to help them. Google Keep is a cool tool that can be used for so much more than research. It can help you as a teacher, as an individual. I've used it for my shopping lists, even though I still think that Apple Notes works better, but it's still something that you can use, and it can make your life a little bit easier. Hopefully through things like using Dogpile, DuckDuckGo, and using things like Google Keep, where we can keep track of students' resources, it does reduces the chance of plagiarism. I know it's always a big concern among educators, especially when it comes to research project or any kind of writing. And then the last thing I just wanted to leave you with was, when we talk about filter bubbles, discuss those logarithms with your students using KQEDs above the noise. And there, again, there's the link for that video. It can help you. The gentleman that produces and is in those videos is very entertaining, and the students do. At least my students find him very entertaining and engaging when they watch those videos. So that's what I have for you in terms of getting started with research. I think Sharon is going to take you into more of the meat and potatoes of research, especially doing things remotely as well. I'll hand it over to Sharon.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeremy. And I'm going to publicly ask you to share your screencast-o-matic on Google Keep, because I think that would be fantastic for my students and would give them another option for basically exactly what I'm going to ask them to do. So that would be fantastic if you could, Jeremy, and then I don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you. All right, so I'm going to talk to you about keeping it meaningful and doable, a research project that works for them and for you. A year ago, I wrote a book called Teaching the Research Paper They Want to Write. This is not a shameless plug for that book. In fact, Troy just put a link in the chat to the rough draft of all of the handouts that are in the book. So you are welcome to access those. You don't have to buy the book. But in the book, what I did was create a research project that students could do that used real-world modern mentor texts. Since informational text is something that we are, teaching our students, working with our students, I realized a couple of years ago that I was only using informational text really as supplementals to fiction, and I wanted to build a unit that used informational text in a more meaningful way. And I realized that if I used research-based informational text, I could have students write a research-based paper, kill two birds with one stone, get rid of the boring research paper that I had them doing, and ended up being a really successful unit for my students that we end the year with. And so that's what this is based on. So in this unit, if I was doing this unit brick and mortar, we use full-length modern mentor texts. We investigate the craft of nonfiction research writing and also investigate the craft of research. So what does a researcher do? We crowdsource our own research ideas in the classroom. We design a personal research project. We incorporate expert sources, and students end the project with a narrative-based research paper that has their own first-person research as well as expert sources that they combine with it. They do in-text citations, a full work cited, and then they present the research out to the class. So it ends up being a fantastic research project. And so if you can go to the next slide, maybe. There we go. If this was the actual research project, we were brick and mortar, these are examples of some of the full-length texts that I use. Students can choose which one they want to read, and they're all research-based. I use a couple by A.J. Jacobs. I only put The Year of Living Biblically up there, but I also have Drop Dead Healthy and My Life is an Experiment. Evicted by Matthew Desmond is fantastic. Nickel and Dimed. Stiff is great. I wouldn't recommend other Mary Roach books, but Stiff is fantastic. The Other Westmore, these are all first-person research-based. And we don't need to watch this YouTube video, but this is kind of how I inspire the students. Matt Cutts in this TED Talk talks about trying something new for 30 days and how if you just try something new for 30 days, how it can change your life. So if we were brick and mortar, this unit would take from 4 to 6 weeks with students reading the full-length book and students creating their own personal research project. However, in the time of remote learning, I've got to think about, you know, a truncated unit and something that I can do so that students still get some exposure to writing a research paper and to some of those, especially the citation skills, because we haven't hit that very hard this year because I do all that here in this last project. So I feel like I still want to do that this year, even though we're remotely. So these are the questions that I considered. And basically, I'm going to walk you through my thought process as I, you know, redesigned this unit and tried to make it something that students could still do from the safety of their own home and would still have meaningful outcomes. And so, you know, these questions to consider for me, for you, what are your end goals for your students? Are there specific standards you need to meet? What resources and technology do your students have? How much calendar time do you have? How much time do you personally have to put into this, right? Not only in building resources, but in giving feedback and in connecting with students. And then how much time daily and weekly do the students have? So I really am trying to plan with purpose. I always begin with the end in mind, and I always think about these items of student engagement, student learning, student safety, and student success, right? Those are at the front and simple, or the front of whatever I do. I try to keep it simple. So as I go through and answer those questions, right? What are my end goals for my students? Well, I want them to be able to conduct a mini research project while at home under these safer at home conditions. I want them to write with purpose and with voice. I want them to actually incorporate quotes, in-text citations, works cited, and personal research. I think those are skills, especially for my juniors, that they really need. And I still want to somehow facilitate some community, some interaction between them so that there's still a little bit of community even though this is remote. So how much time do I have? Well, it depends on how much time I want to work. But for the schedule, we have 2.5 weeks left before our school is finished. And our setup is that we do 1 lesson a week, and then extension activities can be 20 to 30 minutes a day. So overall, 2.5 weeks, 20 to 30 minutes a day, 2 actual lessons that I can push out to students, and then extension activities that they can work on throughout the week. So that's my planning framework. And so the first lesson that I'm going to do, and I'm actually pushing this out to students tomorrow, so I am practicing what I preach, is the craft of stunt journalism. And I'll explain to you what stunt journalism is here in a minute. But I'm going to record a video and build an easy hyperdoc for students to follow. In that video, I'm going to give some short examples of stunt journalism and define it. I'm going to have them brainstorm ideas. And the question that they have to ask is something about their own life that Google can't answer. So this is different than the research projects Jeremy was looking at, where they're learning about butterflies or researching an event that happened. For my research project, it has to be something in their own life, could be something physical, could be something social or emotional, that Google can't just tell them the answer because it's their own life. And then they bring in expert sources about whatever that topic is to kind of build their foundation for their research. So my time commitment is probably about 2 hours of prep. It'll probably take me about an hour to create the slide deck for the video that I'll record. It'll take me 30 minutes to record the video because I'll screw up at least once and have to do it again. And it'll take me about 30 minutes to create the hyperdoc and put it into Google Classroom because I'm only asking them to do a couple of things. And for students, their activity timeline, if you see on the right there, about 20 minutes to watch the video, 10 minutes probably to brainstorm ideas. I'll probably use Flipgrid because I've been having them use Flipgrid all along. That way they can see each other's ideas too, what each other's doing. And then they'll have to actually conduct the stunt journalism, keep a notebook in Google Docs or Google Keep, and then find a couple of expert sources with facts about the topic and put that information into Google Docs or Google Keep as well. So as you can see, I've broken down the time commitment for students, and that is within the umbrella of the 2.5 hours that I can ask of them, give or take. So I feel like I'm all right here. So going forward, I'm going to show you a few examples of stunt journalism. Stunt journalism is where you perform the stunt yourself and then write a narrative about the experience. So this first example, I just pulled some really quick examples yesterday as I was going through. AJ Jacobs, who I've mentioned before, does a lot of stunt journalism. In this one, his stunt, if you notice, is that he has decided he is going to create a 3D printed meal along with 3D printed food. His stunt journalism plan is to immerse himself in the world of 3D printing and live for a week using nothing but 3D printed objects. So that is the stunt that he's going to perform. And then you see in the second paragraph, I approached Todd Lindstrom, a Cornell engineering professor. That's one of his expert resources right there. And he actually hyperlinks. I would have my students put a in-text citation there, but he hyperlinks out to Todd Lindstrom or Lipson. And so that's where he brings his expert sources in. If you can go to the next one, this is another example of a stunt, creating your own happiness, the 20-day positivity challenge, right? One of the expert sources is right at the top, the Wade Boggs quote. And this individual decided to conduct the 21-day positivity challenge and journal about it and write about it. And so you can see that they set up their rationale, why they want to do this, and explain how they are going to go about doing this. They bring in their expert sources, and then they actually do whatever this task is. Two more quick examples that I'll run through. The next one is a 30-day water challenge. And as you can tell, this person didn't notice any results, but they did the 30-day water challenge. And you can see their expert resources. They also hyperlink in the fourth paragraph. Radically Different and Headaches both link out to the expert sources that they brought into their research, but then they also performed the stunt. And then the last example that I grabbed for you was another AJ Jacobs, where he talks about unitasking. Whoops, back one, there we go. Where he talks about unitasking and his attempt to only do one thing at a time and never multitask. And he brings in a lot of research in this single article on all of the different aspects, all the things that go wrong when we try to multitask. So these are examples of stunt journalism where the person basically practices what they preach and they bring in experts to build that foundation of research, whether it's about water is good for your body and how it hydrates the cells and what percentage of our body is water, right? Those would be expert sources that would then contribute to your own research of drinking water and seeing how that affected you or if that affected you. So I want to do a quick activity here where we think about what we might be curious about trying or changing in our daily life. And Jeremy, if you could just play this video, it cracks me up, but also kind of gets me thinking about the things that we can change in our life, the questions we can ask.
A quick transition. I'm going to have Troy play it just because I know that my sound doesn't exactly
Oh,
work.
perfect.
So I'll stop sharing and then I'll have Troy go ahead and play if that's okay, Troy.
Yes, and if I'd been unmuted, you would have heard me say yes, of course. Now I'm saying yes, of course. So I'm going to stop because I think I did not select to share computer sound. I was doing that. All right, here we go. Let me know if you can't hear it.
You ever walked out of a mall into a huge parking area and realized you'd forgotten where you parked your car?
Ever gone mountain biking?
What do you want to be when you grow up? What's the right tip?
Have you called a plumber to your home lately? How superstitious are you?
How much money would it take to make you spend a night in a cemetery? Would you display this as a trophy? Do you have a pet? Do you have a sweet tooth? Do you believe in the power of a curse?
Have you had your hearing tested lately?
Planning a trip soon? Can you remember the tallest man you've ever seen?
Do you love to go a-wandering beneath a clear blue sky?
Have you noticed what big stars real estate agents have become?
Are you careful with your personal records? Does your computer ever seem to have a mind of its own? Have you ever visited a Chinatown section in a major city?
Have you ever visited a flea market? Have you ever visited a truck stop? Did you ever have a job as a waiter?
Have you noticed how many successful restaurants are theme-based these days?
Have you ever had the desire to write your initials in wet cement?
All right, so I mean, that's funny, a funny little video, but still kind of get you thinking about all the questions that you can ask, especially ones that might pertain to yourself. So I'm actually going to take over the screen share at this moment, if you don't mind.
Fact or Fiction was a great show, by the way, so I still watch it on Hulu.
All right, so I would like us to answer this question. What question do you have about changing or improving something in your own daily life? So you can go to pollev.com and enter Sharon Murchie 400, or you can use your phone. But I would like you to think about that question. So let me full screen here so you can see it. There we go. So hopefully that poll is open for you and you can answer some questions in there, but I put 3 of my own. If I actually drink 8 glasses of water every day, will I feel better? Will I eat less if I use a smaller plate? Will I get more done if I set my alarm 1 hour earlier? And so if you could ask some questions in there as well, things that you could do, big or small, that you're curious about what the outcome might be.
And Sharon, you just got a shout out from someone who has to step away. Katie said, have to leave, but I'm enjoying your presentation. Saw you present at MCTE several years ago about source analysis, and that was so
oh my
good.
gosh. Right, thank you. Exactly what Jeremy was talking about. Yeah, I can share that unit too with you guys, no problem. Is the poll everywhere working for people?
I'm going to click in on the web and see what I've got going here.
There we go.
Looks like it is.
Yep.
Ripping off one of the TED Talk questions there. Sorry, I can't manage multiple screens and try to be creative with my questioning all at the same time. Sorry about that.
So yeah, I love this because there are some questions showing up about physical or mental health, right? Walking, eating better, drinking water, exercise. But then there's also some questions that are a little more philosophical. Like this one, I love it. If I go to bed at the same time as my partner, will we feel more connected? Like, what a fantastic question. And so easy to test out. And so, you know, right now we're crowdsourcing ideas, which is what I do with my students, what I'll have them do through Flipgrid. They can just ask their question and see each other's questions and hopefully get inspired. So we'll, about 15 more seconds if you're still typing in a question, and then we will go back to Jeremy's screen share since my computer is less than wonderful.
I think I can effectively answer the dog shedding one if I brush my dog every day. I do it with my dog, and she still like leaves piles of hair around, so I don't think it's gonna work.
That's not gonna work, right?
Yeah.
Oh yes, yes, becoming vegetarian. I can answer that one. I've been a vegetarian for, oh my gosh, 20 years. And yes, you'll feel better, I promise. Yeah, I don't know about binge watching TV shows because I don't see myself giving that up quite yet. All right, I'm going to stop my screen share so that Jeremy can take back over.
Sharon, can I just say mine?
Yes, please.
Because my question, I can't get into the stupid poll everywhere because my eyes are so tired I can't see anymore because I'm watching the screen. Can old eyes be effectively helped during this COVID time with the blue lens glasses? Because I can't see anymore.
Right. That's fantastic, right?
How can I help myself? Because I feel like I'm going blind. Thank you.
Blue lens glasses. Amanda Cornwell, you asked why is one question in a different font? You can set up your poll everywhere to show in different, there's different ways for it to show. It can show in a list, it can show in text boxes. I think I picked the one that said show in a bulletin board. And so the newest question was big, and then when another one comes in, it's big. So it just, that's how it posts. All right, so we asked some questions, right? And in the first week, I'm going to have students ask their question and then actually perform whatever the thing is for 3 to 5 days, right? So just a quick test. First of all, because we don't have a lot of time, but second of all, because we're really asking students to do something outside of their comfort zone. If they're going to give up their cell phone, I'm not going to ask them to give it up for more than a couple of days, right? So this is just a short, fast research. So lesson number 2, right? This is the second week. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to create a video and put out a quick hyperdoc. And the topics that I will cover are the author's craft, so how the author wrote about their writing. And I'm going to cover how to use quotes from expert sources, so how to actually embed the expert source quotes into your writing, how to format in-text citations, and how to create a works cited. So this is much more about the writing craft. And the student activities, again, they'll watch the video, they'll create the citations of their expert sources. They already pulled those sources in the first week, and then they'll write their paper. So they'll write out their narrative of what they did, how they did it, and what the outcomes were. So if you can go to the next slide. This is the outcome for their student paper, right? So what question did you ask and why? What expert sources did you consult and what did you learn? What stunt journalism did you perform? What were your results? And what was the answer to your question? And then a works cited. And so, you know, it's formulated like a research paper, but because it's narrative and it's the student's own life, it's amazing how into it they are. So I gave you an outline example. If you know me, you know that I broke my ankle in December and am now cleared for exercise, but have a long way to go to get back to where I was physically. So, you know, my question is, if I do all my physical therapy exercises like I'm supposed to for 5 days in a row, will I increase my ankle strength and flexibility? The expert sources that I can consult, I'll consult Runner's World magazine because I'm a runner, my physical therapist at MSU Sports Med, and then I'm going to look at rollerderbyathletics.com too because I actually broke my ankle attempting to learn how to play roller derby. So those are my sources. I'll include some facts and in-text citations. And then the stunt journalism I performed, well, I'm going to do all my physical therapy for 5 days in a row. And what are my results? I'm hypothesizing here, but I think I'll probably increase flexibility and decrease swelling. And the answer to my question is that I'm not ready to skate yet, but I'm ready to run. I can run for longer distances and feel stronger. And I'd include my works cited. And so this is the outcome of the paper. And then the final thing that I'm going to have the students do is record a short video in Flipgrid explaining exactly what they explained in their paper, but just in a quick verbal format, probably a 3-minute video, but that gives them a chance to connect with other students and see what each other did. So the student outcomes, my goals and their outcomes is that they'll conduct a mini research project at home, that they'll write with purpose and voice, that they'll learn how to use quotes, in-text citations, and works cited in personal research, and that there's still some class community that is maintained throughout this project. And so that's what I'm going to do, and I'm starting it tomorrow, so I'll let you know how it goes.
All right, so just one thing I wanted to add, because Sharon had talked about works cited, just to, one of the things I do with my students, in case you're wondering, maybe you're not, I don't know, with works cited is, when I begin the year, I always have my students just simply write down websites, and then we build off from that. And we start adding, like, when did I access this website and who was the author? And so I kind of scaffold it all in with my students, in case you were wondering about how do you do works cited? And then I'll introduce tools to them like EasyBibs, Otero, those different types of things. So just a side note there. Just to recap on my end, I like the KISS method, keep it simple, silly. I know that there's another word it's usually used at the end, but I always use silly with my students. Google Keep equals life skills, just because I think it's more than just a simple tool to help with research, but I think it's a tool that can be used to help students within their lives, and it can help us as well as teachers, as educators. And then make your writing assignments more enjoyable for you and your students. I like to read these little things about butterflies or baseball or other things. And actually, I really enjoyed reading some of the stuff that Sharon had on there about the stunts and the water challenge and all that. That was really cool. So I was like, oh, I got some ideas now. So some cool things there. So that's what the 3 things that I would take away today, like to recap on.
Yeah, and my 3 things is just as you're planning anything during this remote teaching time, first of all, begin with the end in mind. What can you boil down to the very basic things that you want students to take away, right? So what do they need to learn? And then plan with purpose and make sure that engagement, learning, safety, and success are at the top. But also, like, as Jeremy has said, you've got to take care of yourself as well. Keep it simple. And one thing that I like about this project, one of the reasons that I threw out my traditional research paper and built this one instead, is because I actually love reading their papers. Because like those 4 stunt journalism pieces, they're engaging, there's a ton of voice, but also, these are my kids. And so I love like seeing what they're doing and hearing them in their papers. And, they're doing the real world research skills and real world research writing, but in a way that is really personal to them. And it makes for some fantastic papers. And so that's me done.
Awesome. Thank you, Sharon. And I really enjoyed those questions that you had us ask in the poll everywhere. That was really cool as well. So I think there's some very useful things there. So thank you for sharing those.
One question in the chat. In their papers, do students just answer the questions in the outline? Is each of the questions a paragraph?
That depends. In this remote teaching situation, I will probably tell them to consider a paragraph for each question. But that kind of depends on them. That's part of author's craft, is determining how you want to present your research to your audience. So, going back through those 4 examples that we went through, each one of those 4 authors kind of presented it in a little bit of a different way, but they all presented answers to all of those questions. And so that's I leave that up to the students, really.
Right, and then there's another question. How long are the papers usually?
I mean, if they answer each question and write a paragraph about each question, which would be the minimum, papers end up being about 2 pages typed. But they can be, if we were doing this brick and mortar, they usually end up being 3 to 5 pages because we do the research for a much longer time. I ask for more expert sources, etc. But I'm guessing they're probably going to be about 2 pages.
All right, fantastic. We have just a moment.
Thanks for the plug for the book, Troy. But again, you don't have to buy the book. All the handouts are, well, rough drafts of the handouts. The ideas of the handouts are PDFs on my website. They're just much prettier in the book.
Yeah. Another question for a slightly deeper dive. Any suggestions about getting or helping students push beyond superficial levels of sources?
I don't know. You want to answer that one, Jeremy?
I'm sorry, I missed the question. I had to log in with I had to chime back in with my phone because my computer decided to be funky again. So what was the question? I can help you.
It says for a slightly deeper dive, suggestions about helping students push beyond the superficial level of sources. I know for me, since we've only got 2.5 weeks and we're doing this remotely, that's not one of my focus points. I'm fine if they're superficial right now because my goal is actually the writing process more than thoughtful curation of sources. If I was brick and mortar, then thoughtful curation of sources would definitely be something we'd focus on if we had 4 to 6 weeks.
I think I think something that's, I don't know if it's necessarily fast, but one of the effective lessons that I've done in my classroom, and again, it's not anything that I've invented, but just building off from others, and that is taking a Wikipedia page on a specific topic and then going down and diving deeper into those sources that are at the bottom, and then looking to see what's credible, who are credible people that are making comments or contributing, who are not so credible. Why would we believe people with titles like, that have doctorate degrees or are professors at colleges, and instead of, someone that lives down the street from me, so you could dive deeper in that way. I do that with 6th graders, and that seems to be effective, but I know that there's other ways that are out there as well.
I'll share a quick strategy too. I think Fred asked a really important question, and I know Jeremy quickly mentioned ZBib. This could be a whole other session that we do. Zotero is a great resource, but the main thing I want to show you here is that, if you're going to tell students you have to have X number of sources, let's say that the number is 5, you might actually say, I want you to have a variety of sources. Like, yes, you can use a Wikipedia page, and yes, you can use a blog entry, but what are the other types of sources you might use? And what's great is when you go to manually enter a source here in ZBib, it gives you all these different categories of different types of things, everything from a dictionary entry to a personal email, to a film, to a journal article. And so I think even just having students look at this list and ask that question, what counts as evidence? And for whom and in what context, I think you could look at that list and say, well, when would it be appropriate to cite a corporation or an organization's webpage? When would it be appropriate to cite a presentation or something along those lines? So that's just one strategy to start opening up that conversation a little bit too. All right. Well, I always think we're going to have time to talk at the end. And we have so much great information from our presenters. Suddenly it's 5 o'clock. So what I'll do is say that we will hang out for a few minutes for kind of a post-show conversation. I put the link to our remote literacy learning institute for this summer in there. And of course, I'll follow up in email to those of you that attended or have asked to get the archive recording. So those will be there. Yeah, and Sandy, thanks for the kind words. Yes, the archived recordings of everything are available on that continuity of our own professional learning webpage. So when you click into this webpage and then you scroll down You'll see the session 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you'll see a link that says session archive, and then that will take you to another page. You'll have the YouTube video, the slides, the hyperlinks, all those types of things. So with that, thank you again, Jeremy and Sharon, for a wonderful presentation today. Thanks to all of you for being here. If you need to sign out at this point, certainly we understand, and we will look forward to seeing you next week when we begin a conversation about learning how to learn online as professionals. You'll get more updates in your email, and we'll certainly stick around for a few minutes after the recording ends. So thanks so much, everybody. Have a good rest of your afternoon.